BookExpo America, New York City 2009. We're here with John Sherer, publisher at Basic Books. John, what does a publisher do?
Publisher is just the title I have. I run the imprint of Basic Books. So we have editorial, marketing, publicity, design, and I just end up making the final decisions on things. I say a lot of yes or no is what I do all day long.
What do you say yes or no to?
Whether we're going to acquire a book, how much we're going to pay for it, what type of resources we'll put into marketing it and promoting it. The final call on, which jacket. A lot of A over B. I like this jacket better than that one. What the price will be, how many we should print, ship. A bunch of small decisions. All adds up to big decisions, but a bunch of small ones along the way.
Now, how long have you been in books, and where did you come from before Basic? Did you always want to be a publisher?
No, I serendipitously found the book business. I was in retail. I ran a bookstore in Washington for 10 years. And finally decided I enjoyed the book business so much I wanted to try something a little different than retail. Publishing was the obvious choice. So I've been, you're going to date me here. I think this might be almost 20 years of book expos, ABAs as they used to be called. About half of them in retail and half of them in publishing now.
So let's talk about some of the books that you've said yes or no to. Decisions on, I should say. We'll start off right here with Rick Steves. Now he's the travel memoirs from PBS, correct?
Right, so a lot of people know Rick Steves because he's the Europe Through the Back Doors, his travel series, and he's really got some of the best travel books on the market. But Rick is also politically very active, and the travel guides, it's not appropriate to have a lot of political activism in a travel guide because people want to sort of make their own decisions about how they're going to travel. But this is a long essay on the fact that when you travel, that you actually are committing a political act, and that when you travel, you should you should consider where you're going and how you behave when you're in a place, and that Americans need to basically travel better, and that you can learn as much from the culture that you're going to visit. And you'll see the cover has this suitcase on it, and the idea is that when you come back from a place, you should bring back as much of that place as possible, make America a more interesting place, make you a more interesting individual. So it's his political essay on travel.
So just getting back to the idea of you being the publisher here, the cover, did you make that decision? Did you have anything to do with that, or how did that come about?
So that cover was actually originated by one of the marketing people at Perseus. We struggled because we knew it couldn't look like a conventional travel guide. It couldn't have a single destination. But we also didn't want it to seem too overtly political. We wanted it to seem accessible, a little bit fun, a little bit old-fashioned. So that's actually a suitcase that Rick Steves owned, and we put stickers on it. It's not, a stock photo that we found. We put it together and then designed around it. So I like the way it's clean, but it's fun, and the message gets across really clearly.
So when our viewers are at the bookstore, they know that a lot of thought has actually been put into these covers.
Oh yeah, no, we agonize, and covers are one of the toughest things that we do because everybody has a legitimate opinion about what works as a cover, and sometimes what I'm doing is just filtering through the many different legitimate voices and just trying to pick the one that I think is gonna help us in the long run.
I should add, all the books we're talking about here on the table are out right now. These are spring titles.
That's right. So this show usually is to talk a little bit about fall books, but then we also bring spring books that have just landed, and that book just published last month. So
let's talk about two books right here on the economy. I guess you would say two divergent takes on the current state of the economy?
Certainly from two different perspectives. Robert Frank is, to simplify things, I would say, is a liberal economist. He writes as a column for the New York Times, teaches at Cornell, and he's done this Economic Naturalist. This is the second book that he's done for us, and it's a collection of pieces about how to think about the current crisis through economic terms. He helps people come up with a vocabulary to help understand all the kind of garbage that you hear in the news to sort through it. He has a lot of prescriptive solutions as well. Then on the other side you have Tom Sowell, who is a conservative economist out at the Hoover Institution in California, very widely respected. Both these men are enormously respected. And we approached Professor Sowell and said, we'd like you to write a book on what's happened in the economy. And he said, without a doubt, I need to write about the housing crisis, because in his opinion, the housing crisis is what precipitated the entire economic boom and bust.
So we have some travel, we have the economy, and then we have this book by Chris Mooney about science in America. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Right, so Chris Mooney is a science journalist, and he wrote a book for us a couple years ago called The Republican War on Science, which was a bestseller. And now he's moved on to the idea that we have a problem with scientific literacy in this country. And I think the argument he would make is that when you read the front page of a big daily paper and you look at the problems that this country faces, an enormous number of them are scientific problems, or maybe I should say they're problems that have scientific solutions. And one of the things that we're struggling with in this country is that we don't have the capacity, we don't have the infrastructure to build scientists who can help solve these problems. And so this is an argument saying that we need to increase the scientific literacy in this country, and that includes some obvious things like our education system, but it also means that scientists have to do a better job of talking about scientific solutions to our problems in accessible terms for the public.
Now, you had mentioned that this is the convention where people come out and talk about their fall books, fall being the biggest season in the book industry, when you would release your largest titles.
That's right. I mean, the consumers sort of come out to spend for the holidays is the assumption. And so when I was in retail, the assumption was you did about a fourth of your business in November and December. I don't know whether that number still takes, but publishers do tend to push their biggest books for that type of year. It's when gift books, a lot of illustrated books come out. And for us, because Basic doesn't do illustrated books and gift books per se, we do a lot of history and science and psychology and things like that. So we tend to put the most, as we like to say, gifty in the jargon of the industry, the giftiest books that come out that time of year. So there were just two I wanted to.
I should add real quick, if you want to, John's holding a catalog here. This is something that book buyers, librarians, media, this is what you put together so they know what's coming out, and you can essentially pitch them on the books.
Right. Publishers think in terms of seasonal lists. Most publishers have 2 or 3 lists per year. And again, I don't know if you can read there, but this is the fall list. And what we do is just descriptive copy for every book. It has a bio of the author and jackets, and sometimes it's quotes or examples from the book. And I think you summarized it perfectly. I think the main tool is for booksellers, but the publicists use it for media. We use it for authors and agents so that they can see what individual publishers are doing. And we have to plan books into the marketplace 6-9 months ahead of time, and so you have to have something that's sort of polished like this so that the retailers and the publicity folks can see what the final book's going to look like, because some of these books haven't been finished, they're still being written, and so we don't have the finished book to show. So
let's talk about 2 of those.
Right, so Eugene Rogan is a historian at St. Anthony's College at Oxford. This is what we think is going to be a major new history of the Arabs, and he's taken an interesting approach. He chose to start this history in the 1500s, and his concept there was that is when the Ottomans first conquered the Arab lands, and that one of the defining characteristics of Arab history is that they've frequently been an occupied ethnic group. And so he decided that was the key, that rather than start with, say, Muhammad, which is where other histories have started, that this was the defining moment. And what he would argue is that Arabs value history in ways that those of us in the West, we don't think about it. First of all, their history is much deeper and richer. There was also, for most of their history, they were a dominant power, and I think one of the things that's going on in the Middle East now is that Arabs are seen as, that the West sort of looks down on them, and that's something that's very inconsistent with their history. So it's very important to understand Arab history if you want to try and unravel what's happening in the Arab lands today.
I noticed this author lives in Oxford, England. Would you bring him to the United States to talk about his book? Yeah,
so we will bring him to do. It's funny because history is a little tough to get media, because the media is sort of obsessed with what's in the news, and even though I just tried to make the argument to you about why this is relevant to the news, that'll be a little bit of a battle when we try and pitch it. Books about the economic situation, it's a little bit easier to tour and get media for the authors. But we just thought this is such an important book that we would bring him over, and we will get some media for that.
And the second book for the fall that you wanted to talk about?
This is a book by Seth Lipsky. So Seth Lipsky was the founder and former editor of the New York Sun, and he's quite well known in conservative circles. He writes regularly for the Wall Street Journal, and he decided that Americans don't know enough about the American Constitution, and you can buy a Constitution for $1. They're sort of available. It's a pretty short book, but what he decided is that people don't read the Constitution because they don't understand the context of it. So his idea is to do an annotated Constitution. So the book itself is the full text of the Constitution, but for each amendment and for each article of the Constitution, he goes back and looks at the historical context into which the amendment or the article was written. He looks at the ways that it's been applied throughout history. He looks at it in terms of how the court has applied it. I wish I had this book out right now, because he would be really quick to comment on, because we're all talking about the court's interpretations of the Constitution. So and since we know there will inevitably be another Supreme Court justice to be nominated and approved, we'll be ready to roll this out. But Seth Lipsky is is a very well-known conservative journalist, and we're really excited about this. It's his first book, and we think it's going to get a lot of attention.
John Sherer, former bookseller, currently publisher, Basic Books. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Cleve.